For over 50 years, Ernesto Colnago has been working alongside cycling enthusiasts and many champions. Let's take a look together at his remarkable story. A man who is known as the Wizard of Cambiago, a true world leader in the field of racing bicycles. Ernesto, your story began at the age of 13 when you were employed as an apprentice mechanic in a bicycle factory called Gloria. We're talking about 60 years ago. So I went to this firm. It was one of my first times in Milan too. The owner asked me, "How old are you?" 14, I replied. I lied about my age by a year. It was November the 25th, St. Catherine's Day. I remember that there was a bit of snow about. They took me on straight away as an assistant welder, and so I started working at Gloria. But shortly afterwards you started cycling. You even won 13 races. Do you remember what bicycle you had back then, and which champion you most admired at the time? Well, we actually built the bicycle at the factory there at Gloria. Basically around that time there were the famous Garibaldina bicycles, and of course I had a Garibaldina, the same type of bike that Ezio Cecchi came second with in the Giro d'Italia behind Bartali. I had a bike made to suit me. It would have been much too much to say custom built in this day and age. They gave me a bike with a very low saddle, but anyway, I raced with a Garibaldina and I won a few races. Then I had another made to measure bike. The make was Lampo. During the last few years of my cycling career, when I had understood a bit more about measurements, etc., I made another bike called Lampo. The cyclist I admired most at the time, you know, when I was young, my role model was a boy who was a Lombard champion. He was called Giorgio Albani. And seeing as I was born in 1932 and he was born in 1928, he was older than me by a few years. I had a lot to learn and I used to follow him in the races. Then I was lucky enough to come across other cyclists when I was out on my bike. Adolfo Leone, not forgetting how lucky I was to get to know Fiorenzo Magni just around that time. Well, that was the best thing really. Some years later you had to stop because of a bad accident during the Milan Busseto race. The end of a career. I came 4th or 5th in that Milan Busseto race, but once across the finishing line, the spectators were crowding forward to see a Guzzino motorbike, you know, the one with the leg shield, and I fell and I rode into them and fractured my right fibula. So I spent 50 days in plaster with my leg in traction. So during those 50 days, when I was out of action, I sent a message to my boss, Mr. Alfredo Foccesi, to send me some wheels to mount at home. Even if I had my leg in traction, I could still mount and align a few wheels. Anyway, that was the beginning, and I would say from the bad luck of having to stop racing, although I tried unsuccessfully to carry on racing for a bit, from the bad luck, as I said, came good luck, because working for a week, mounting wheels for third parties, I earned as much as I did working for a month as foreman. But the turning point came when Magni asked you to work at the Giro d'Italia, where you demonstrated all your skills in the world of professional racing. Yes, that time too we met one day when I was out cycling again, because as I said before, I wanted to get back to competing. There were only 4 or 5 days left before the Giro d'Italia. There was Magni, Albani, Donato Pia. Magni had problems with leg pains because of his new bike. I must explain that back then it wasn't like today when the pedal cranks have 2 precise square slots. but there were two chiavelle, and you needed an artisan able to file them so that the two pedal cranks would line up. So I said to Manny, and I used to address him formally with lei, "Do you know why your leg hurts, Fiorenzo?" "I think it's because you've got a bent pedal crank." We talked about it a bit, and then we went to my little shop, to my workshop where I worked for third parties. I sorted out his chiavetta and everything, and Manny's leg pain went away. The day after, he sent me a masseur saying to him, "Tell Ernesto if he wants to come to the Giro d'Italia, he should come by tomorrow." The official mechanic at that time was Faliero Masi. He was a genius with bicycles. Magni told Vigorelli to see me 2 days before the Giro d'Italia. I went with my motorbike to see him, and he asked me in Tuscan dialect, "What are you able to do?" And I said, "I know a bit about everything." He didn't believe me, seeing as I was in my early 20s. He said, "There are a few wheels that need mounting." "How many are there?" "Ah, you need to work all night." In fact, there were 25 wheels to mount. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. By 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I had mounted and aligned 25 wheels. And that was how it started. You also built a frame for Nencini, who won his Giro d'Italia, another memorable moment. Yes, Gastone Nencini. It was already 1957, but I had made a few frames for other races too by then. Anyway, Nencini wanted me to make him a frame suitable for every kind of route, descent, etc. He trusted me. And as a matter of fact, I created a frame for him made in a certain way, like we used to back then, because technology always moves on, it always develops, and Gastone always thanked me both during and after the Giro d'Italia for that frame, because I've always done everything I could, given everything I had in me. Your fame grew, you were taken on as a mechanic by the Italian national team, and you were also the national team mechanic when Adorni won in Imola. They saw Ernesto Colnago not just as a mechanic but also as a person who saw more than just a race. I remember when Vittorio won the World Championship in Imola. Incidentally, in our offices we both had the same photo of him with his arms in the air. Another one where he has his bike over his shoulders. Those are great memories. You won the Giro d'Italia with Motta. There's something I'd like to say about Gianni Motta, who is like a son to me. An ex-racing cyclist introduced him to me saying, "Give him a hand, he'd like a bicycle, even a second-hand one." I saw this boy, he looked Belgian to me with curly hair, you know, but you could see he had character. Anyway, I let him try out a bicycle and he said to me, "Well, if you could get it ready for me by this evening, I can go and visit my grandma." "Where does your grandma live then?" "In Premeno." "What do you mean, Premeno? It's 130 kilometers from here." That's nothing, I usually go there by bike." So you could see straight away that he had character. Gianni Motta was like my first creation. I followed him. I took him to a professional level and a lot more, his wedding, etc. But then you won the Sanremo race with Dancelli. Dancelli, well, it had been ages since an Italian had won that race. It was a great triumph. I remember that Giorgio Albani was driving the car. Next to him sat Pietro Molteni and then me with a bicycle over my shoulder, and we were shouting, "Ale Michele! Ale Michele!" And so we won the Sanremo race through the laughter and tears. That race seemed jinxed for the Italians at the time, and that was when the famous trademark Asso di Fiore was created. On the way back, and remember back then no one stayed overnight, you know, money was tight, you would leave, have a snack and then come back. And I stopped off at Iguelia, where I came across Bruno Raschi, who was typing on his typewriter. He said hello, and then I'm writing the In Fiore Bicycle 1. He finished writing and we chatted about this and that, and he said, "Why don't you create a trademark?" I went home, and to cut a long story short, the trademark with the Asso di Fiore, the Ace of Clubs, was registered within a week, which went on to bring us so much good luck in life. But let's move on to 1971. Eddie Merckx arrived